Hi everyone, welcome to our kitchen. This is one of a series of cooking videos by the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources 4-H Youth Development Program. So my name is Carmen and I have two very special guests here with me today, Matthew.
Hello.
And Casey, who is joining us through video chat. So Matthew and Casey have both worked as nutrition educators in some capacity. They used to work for our local county public health. So they are experts in making not only recipes that are tasty and healthy, but also in a safe manner. So today we're actually going to make two recipes and we're going to feature a favorite summertime fruit, which is the watermelon. We're going to be making a watermelon salsa and a refreshing watermelon slush. So let's get started.
All right, thank you for that introduction, Carmen. So once again, my name is Matthew, and we'll be going over a couple things before we get started with our two recipes. And I'll be talking about food safety, and Casey will be talking about kitchen safety, so I'll let him get started with that.
Thank you, Matthew. Again, my name is Casey. Thank you guys for watching this video. For kitchen safety, as always, when we want to work in a kitchen, we want to make sure it is safe, secure. We have all the things that we need. So for today's recipe, I know Matthew's about to go over all the cooking and the food ingredients, but for today, we don't need a lot. We have a cutting board. Make sure the cutting board is on a stable surface, like the table that I have here. We also will be using a wooden spoon for mixing. I would have a blender, but I do not have one. Matthew will be using a blender for the recipe for the salsa. You'll also be needing a knife. The one I have here shows that I have a sheath on it. It's for a protective reason. I'll talk more about chopping as we go through the recipe, as well as a couple spoons and, oh, of course, mixing bowls for mixing all the watermelon salsa. As always, make sure everything is clean, sanitized beforehand. Make sure your surface is clean and stable. And I believe that's all that we need for today. Go ahead, Matthew.
All right, thank you very much. So next we're going to go over basic food safety. Since it's a pretty simple recipe, we're not going to go too in depth into it. But first of all, before you start any sort of cooking, even before you start eating, you want to make sure your hands are really, really clean. And especially now more than ever, I'm sure we're familiar with how to wash our hands. Just the basic instructions: wet your hands with clean running water, apply soap, and use warm water if it's available. Rub your hands together to make a lather and scrub up for about 20 seconds. That's about the same as singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star twice in a row. And then rinse your hands thoroughly and dry using a clean paper towel. And if possible, use a paper towel to turn off the faucet if you're not at home, if you're somewhere else, because you don't know what they're doing in other kitchens or other facilities that might be, dirtier, or you may not know how they clean them. Second, as Casey said, you want to sanitize your surfaces. So make sure that not only are your bowls, your cutting boards, your knives, everything clean, but even the ingredients you're working with are very clean. So since we're working with fruits and vegetables, we want to make sure that things like this bell pepper have been washed under cold running water. You want to make sure that the cilantro here has also been cleaned. We just ran down into some water, stirred it around in the colander to make sure that it was nice and clean, got all that sand and dirt off. And even though we're not eating the rinds or the outside of this watermelon, you do want to make sure you still wash it. The reason for that is something called cross-contamination. That's where when we bring it to our cutting board and we're cutting it up and everything, and we're cutting off this skin or this rind, your cutting board, your hands, your knife has all been in contact with this skin. And then let's say you're now moving on to cutting this bell pepper, which you are going to eat the skin of. You use that same knife, use that same cutting board, which has touched the skin of the watermelon. So you've now transferred whatever is on top of that watermelon to this surface. So that's why you want to make sure that both these things are very clean, even though you're not going to eat the skin of this. So same way as the cilantro or this bell pepper, you just want to run it under cold running water, wipe it clean, make sure there's nothing on it, take off any of these stickers that you find usually on this produce, and throw it away. All right. And most important of all, when you're all finished cleaning, cooking, everything's put away, and whether you have a container like this or a Ziploc bag with your salsa and slushy, you want to make sure you store it at the right temperature. That means it needs to be cold. Typically what you're going to do is we have a container right here. We're going to put our salsa inside, seal it, make sure it's nice and sealed. Sometimes I like to put a label on top saying this is watermelon salsa. We made it on this date, which is today. And then I would just put it in the fridge and make sure that I eat it within about 5 days, because past that, it may not be good anymore. And, if you start seeing, things growing inside, or if it just smells a little funny, just play on the safe side, throw it away, and make a brand new batch of salsa or slushy. All right, and that's all we have for food safety right now. So we're gonna get started now, and Casey's gonna show us what we need to be doing for the first recipe.
Perfect, thank you, Matthew, that was very thorough. So as we've already said, our recipe today is watermelon salsa. So what's the first and main ingredient to watermelon salsa? You already called it, watermelon. Matthew on the screen shows that he has a watermelon that he will be going through and chopping as I talk through this recipe. For me, however, I did not get a watermelon. I actually bought pre-sliced seedless watermelon at the local store, which whatever is available to you can totally work. Again, like Matthew had mentioned, make sure your ingredients have already been rinsed and they're ready for prep. For me currently, like I said before, you want to grab your knife, the cutting utensil that you're using. As always, make sure that your surface is stable. You want to make sure that the knife stays on the cutting board. We don't walk around with it, and make sure that it's, to be seen or it's protected. For me, I'm going to go ahead and start grabbing the watermelon chunks and putting it onto the cutting board. And just like anything, we'll just start chopping away. Now, most important part about chopping, for holding onto it, to the ingredient like the watermelon or anything that you cut, you want to kind of like close your fingers more into a paw motion and put it down onto the food. And why we want to do that is because if there's some kind of accident or something moved out of place, we do not chop any or cut ourselves in any sort of way. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the watermelon salsa. The fun part about watermelon, as you cut it, it's really, really easy to cut.
So as you're cutting up the watermelon, I'm just going to share some watermelon facts with you guys. So watermelon is actually, it does contain a lot of water. So 96% of it is water. So that's why it's very popular in the summer. When you're outside and it's hot and you're thirsty, you grab the watermelon and it's so refreshing. And that's because a majority of the watermelon is water. It is currently in season. So right now we are approaching summer, and watermelon is a summer fruit. So this is one of the reasons why we decided to choose watermelon as our main ingredient. It is always nice if you can buy fruits and vegetables that are in season. This is because it usually tastes better, and they are also usually cheaper. So some of the other summer fruits and vegetables are like cherries, corn, tomatoes, blueberries, raspberries, peaches, plums, broccoli, eggplant, and green beans. So those are just some of the examples of other summer fruits and vegetables that you can find. Watermelon actually dates back to over 5,000 years ago. It is said to have originated in the deserts in Africa and have been recorded on ancient walls in Egyptian hieroglyphics. The watermelon was added to burial tombs of kings because they were thought to provide nourishment in the afterlife. As you can see, watermelons have kind of two different types of seeds. Some are like white, and I think as you cut into it, you can find some black ones. The white ones are actually called seed coats, so they're not true seeds. And the black, darker ones that you might be able to find as you cut it inside, those are the real seeds that you use to grow the watermelons. And another fun fact is that watermelon is so popular, it has its own day. So National Watermelon Day is actually on August 3rd. So they're still cutting up. Well, Casey has pre-cut one, so he just cut his into smaller chunks, and then Matthew is cutting up a whole watermelon.
So right now, I'm going to be using a technique called paws, not claws. When I'm cutting this watermelon, Casey will explain it real quick while we're doing it.
Yeah, again, so as Matthew's demonstrating it, a claw would be having like your hand out, just like you're grabbing a ball, but we don't want to do that. We want to kind of curl our fingers in, as Matthew's demonstrating, and that's because as you're cutting, it will not hurt your fingers if anything was to happen or if the staple was to move around. And that way you can also maintain and hold the ingredients very well and firm.
So
while Matthew is finishing up on chopping, I do want to mention that the recipe calls for about 3 cups of watermelon chopped. I think right now, Matthew and I are both using about 1.5 to 2 cups of watermelon. The fun part about food and like cooking with recipes is that it's really at your own personal preference. You'll see as we work on this recipe, we're going to both do things differently, but you can just have fun and you can just kind of gauge on how much you want to use. Go ahead, Carmen.
Oh, so I was just going to say, as Matthew is still chopping up watermelons, before we move on to the next ingredient, I'll share some more watermelon facts with you guys. So watermelon is high in vitamins A and C. So they are very good for you. Not only are they tasty, but they are also healthy. And when you buy a watermelon, make sure to pick one that is relatively heavy. I think the heavier it is, the more water content it has. And also, you want to store whole uncut watermelons at room temperature. So when you buy it at the store, bring it home, store it in room temperature. And if you already cut up the watermelons, do refrigerate it, put it in the fridge in an airtight container for up to 5 days. Now, since this is by the California Forage Program, we want to share with you some California watermelon facts. But the watermelon in California is produced or farmed in a few different places throughout the state. So they are produced in the northern Central Valley, which is Sacramento and Stanislaus counties. They are also produced in the Central Valley, which is Kern and Tulare counties, and in the southern desert area, which is Imperial and Riverside counties. So the watermelon is really grown throughout California, and it is usually planted from December to as late as early July and harvested from mid-May to late October. So you could potentially get watermelon for quite a few months. All right, so we're just about done cutting up the watermelon. So basically what Matthew and Casey's done is just chopping it up into kind of small little cube, and it does actually yield quite a bit. I would say that's like what? That's more than 2 cups.
That's like more than 2 cups.
Yeah, that's
so we're gonna set this one aside.
We can use this for our next recipe. All right, back to you, Casey.
Cool. Thank you. Good job chopping, Matthew. I was watching that the whole time.
Thank you.
Our next ingredient is the onion. For me, I chose to use red onion. There's different kinds of onions, different colored onions. I think as you look at Matthew's video, he has a white onion. The recipe calls for about half an onion. So for the sake of time, I've already chopped some of mine up, but I'm going to dice it up a little bit more. But ultimately, most important thing, just like Matthew's going to demonstrate, is we want to make sure to use the paw motion to hold it. You chop it to make a stable surface of the vegetable, so then you can keep cutting it and then cutting it down and dicing it to a smaller surface area or smaller pieces. And why we want to do that is so it can mix really well with the small pieces of the watermelon that we just made.
And how much onion are we using, Casey?
So the recipe calls for about half an onion chopped. I think I'm going to use maybe about that or a little bit less than that. And just like we've mentioned, if you're someone who likes onion, you know, maybe you want to add more to it. Or if you're someone who doesn't want to add onion at all, you can always substitute it for something different. And like I said, I'm using a red onion while Matthew's using a white onion. Kind of mixes it up. Fun part about these recipes is you can always make it more personalized. Once you got the onion chopped, go ahead and throw it into the bowl with your watermelon.
And I also think it depends on the size, because some onions are big and some you get small. So just kind of try to see what kind of size onions you get. That will determine whether you use the whole thing, a half, or a quarter.
Ooh, my eyes.
Oh yeah, onions also make your eyes water. So yeah, if your eyes touch water, you know, just kind of take a break. Definitely don't hold a knife when your eyes are in pain.
Yeah, don't touch your eyes after you cut an onion.
And that too.
Oh, I gotta take a quick break.
Happens to the best of us.
And now we're back.
So as you can see here, we are connecting with Casey through a video call or video chat. And this is because Casey lives kind of in another area. He lives in a different county than us. And we're trying to practice safe social distancing. And so that's why we're having him call in. Matthew and I live in the same household, so we are okay in that respect. So if you are thinking about, you know, maybe doing an activity, a cooking activity with a friend, or you want to do a cooking project or continue on with your cooking project during this time when you might not be able to be in the same space, this might be one way that you can try to engage in some kind of activity, cooking activity or other activity with a friend or family that is not necessarily close to you or in the same area as you.
That's a very good point, Carmen. At least this gives a fun activity that you can do with family or friends on a Zoom call or any kind of call.
Okay.
All right, onions are in.
Perfect. All right, for our next ingredient, we'll be using, I'll be actually adding cilantro. So before we started this call, we've already rinsed the cilantro, so I'm just going to reiterate that when you have the cilantro, you want to grab about like, usually it's in a bundle or a bunch, just like Matthew's showing right now. For this recipe, we're going to use maybe about half of that bunch, so you can like untwine it and pull like the stems apart from it. Now, the cool part about cilantro that most people don't know is that you don't just have to eat you don't have to just eat the leaves, excuse me. The stems are actually edible as well.
Okay. And the way I like to chop it is I like to chop it all at once in a bundle like this. It makes it easier. Also, you'll save on time. If you try to chop each of these stems by itself, you're going to be here all day. So this is just a kind of a quick shortcut that's also safer than actually cutting one at a time. So I have them all bundled up like that. Same thing, paws, not claws. And I'm just going to start chopping down the stem of each one, moving your hand as you get closer to them. Okay. And then from here, I'll bundle it up again and I'll chop a little more because I want smaller pieces than this. And this is the same way I kind of did the onion where I just went over it a couple times to get smaller and smaller pieces. All right. So now I'm just going to add it to our bowl. And you can see that even half a bundle is quite a lot when it's all chopped up, so you don't really need a lot. But with any of these recipes, you can definitely make it your own. If you don't really like cilantro, you can definitely change it up. Maybe you want to add mint to it instead. I've seen mint watermelon salsas. If you don't want to add any greens, you can just add other vegetables, which we'll be doing a little bit later. Casey won't be using any of the peppers, but we're going to change it up and add the jalapeno for spiciness and just the red bell pepper for a little extra color, a little more crispness as well.
So you could also probably add parsley. We just realized that we bought parsley instead of cilantro. So when you go out to grocery shopping, make sure you check what you buy before you buy them because we actually bought the wrong thing. But it's fine. We'll use it anyway. And, you know, they're a nice shade of green, kind of close enough. So that's fine. But the original recipe calls for cilantro, and Casey does have cilantro. We unfortunately just kind of bought the wrong thing.
So maybe we're making something very special here. We're going to try it, but it's always good to experiment.
Yeah. And just like Matthew said, for the recipes, it does call for a bell pepper or a jalapeno. I don't really want something really spicy for today, so I'm not going to be adding those, but you can watch Matthew as he's chopping his.
So if you like spicy, add the jalapeno. If you're not a fan of spicy, you can leave it out. It's not necessary. Also, a thing about jalapeno is that if you remove the seeds, it will be less spicy. And if you keep the seeds on it, it will be more spicy. So that's a good thing about cooking is that you can kind of adjust to whatever you feel like it, and you can adjust the amounts. You don't have to follow the recipe exactly. You can just kind of play around with it. And when this video is shared and posted, we will also have the recipe for you posted as well. So you can take a look at that and don't worry about needing to get all the exact measurements right now.
And here's the most important tip when slicing up jalapeno peppers. When I was working a job a while back, I had to make this big batch of salsa using peppers, and I wear glasses. And so that night when I was actually serving the salsa, I decided to change the contacts, and I washed my hands and everything. What ended up happening is I didn't wash them well enough, and I put jalapeno peppered contacts into my eyeballs. So, word of warning, please wash your hands thoroughly. I even recommend using dish soap, maybe not just hand soap. And if you have to touch your eyes, well, don't touch your eyes. Because that was probably one of the most painful experiences I've had. So once again, be very careful with these peppers, because not only are they spicy when you eat them, they're spicy when you put them on your eye. All right, I'm almost done here.
So you're using a red bell pepper today, Matthew?
I am. And there are many other different types of bell peppers. What other color bell peppers have you seen in the store, Casey?
I've seen red. I like to get the orange ones, and then yellow, I think, are the most ones I see. But I know there's other colors.
Yeah, I know there's a green one. Is there a purple one?
Purple? I don't think so.
That'd be cool if there was, but we can always check that. Prove me wrong. Find a purple bell pepper. All right, so we're working on the bell peppers, as you can see.
Should have got an orange one.
Oh, it's okay. We can get red, like the watermelon. So these are going to be a little difficult just because they're unusual shape, and you can see the stem up here. You don't want to eat the stem, and there are multiple different ways to cut this. I'm going to show you the way that I like to cut it just to make it easier. So what I like to do is first I'll chop off the top, and I kind of think of it like a pumpkin, where I'm chopping off the top and making a jack-o'-lantern. You scoop out the inside. So you have the inside here, and I can just use my hand. You can also use a spoon, and I'll just tear out this whole sort of section with the seeds on it. You can see it here. You don't want to eat that. And on the inside, it's pretty clean, but you have these little white fins almost. You can just pull them out with your hand, or you can slice them out with a knife later on. I just kind of find this way a little easier. Make sure you get all the seeds out. All right. And actually that top part, you can still use it. The green stem actually pops right off, and you have almost this little donut. All right. So with this, we're going to put it down flat. Since this side is flat, it's going to be more stable versus here, it's going to be more wobbly. I'm going to cut it in half. And then we have this half laid down flat once again. I'm going to cut these into thin strips. All right. I'm going to put these aside for now. I'm just going to use this little bit here since we don't need too much. And just for showing you guys what it looks like, thin strip. And this is very easy to slice now. And you can even bundle them together like we did with the cilantro or parsley in our case. Once again, we're going to just chop it up. Paws, not claws.
Yeah.
All right. And the final batch here. And here's an important tip. If at any point you feel sort of unstable or uncomfortable while you're cutting, stop. It's perfectly fine to just stop and not just push through what you're chopping, because you might be more likely to hurt yourself. So it's okay to just stop, reorient yourself, find a more stable position with your fruits or vegetables that you're slicing, and then just go over it again. We're not professional chefs, but we can make good food at home, even though it might take longer, it may not be as flashy as those cooking shows. What's important is your safety. All right, I'm gonna set this aside.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, so for our next ingredient, actually, I think it's our last ingredient, which is gonna be the lime juice. So I have a lime that I had at my kitchen, so I'll be using that. Some people either have limes or lime trees. I believe Matthew does not have lime, but he got lime juice that he can use. There you go, perfect. So again, just like the techniques we've been using, we'll be chopping the lime, same thing, paws, not claws. And go ahead and chop the lime. Then for me, I'm gonna just go ahead and squeeze this half over the bowl into our salsa. Of course, you want to be careful when you squeeze it because it could just shoot anywhere and we don't want it to hit our eyes.
And so it's just about 1 tablespoon of lime juice. Again, you can add it, if you want more, if you want less, you can adjust it accordingly. I think Casey is probably squeezing half a lime.
Half a lime, yeah. I like lime. But again, it's always good to start with like a little bit, and then as you try the recipe and you feel like you want to add more to it, you can always add more accordingly. You can't go backwards if you add too much. So as Matthew's showing on the better angle of the recipe, he's going ahead and started mixing the watermelon salsa. As I am doing the same thing for me right now. Like Matthew had mentioned at the beginning of this recipe, when we are done, and you've tried it, which I'm about to try in a second, make sure to put it in an airtight container so then you can put it, that's beautiful. Make sure to put it in an airtight container so then you can save it for later, like, and then put it in the fridge for up to, I believe, what, 3 to 5 days, you said, Matthew?
I would say up to 5 days at most. Because it uses such fresh ingredients, we're not using any preservatives, except maybe the lime juice, which has that acid in there. Because it is so fresh and made it at home, it's not going to last as long, but it's going to be healthier than anything you might buy from the store. It's not going to have a ton of added salt or sugar or oil or anything. So it's going to be really good, but just be careful not to wait too long to eat it. You want to make sure you eat it in a timely manner.
All right, Casey, are you ready to taste?
I am. I was about to try it as he was talking, and then I thought I'd wait. I already mixed it. I'm going to try it right now.
Oh, partially works.
It's good.
It did it.
I mean, it's an option, especially if you don't like cilantro. So personally, I don't like cilantro. And a lot of people know I don't like cilantro. So, you know, if you don't like cilantro, hey, parsley works. But if you want a more kind of authentic or traditional taste of salsa, then I think cilantro and onions are definitely necessary in this. But it's good. It's the watermelon is sweet. It's refreshing. It's great.
And one other thing about food safety, you notice that we're using our own spoons here, and actually Casey's using the same spoon to mix it as well as eat it. That's because this salsa is for us. Now, if you were serving this to other people, like let's say for a party, you don't want to reuse the same spoon because essentially you've introduced your own germs to this main batch of salsa. So if you're going to be taste testing it for a party, make sure to use the spoon once, put it away, dispose of it, clean it, and then use a new spoon. The reason why we're tasting it now is because now we can make alterations. Let's say we didn't have enough of that tanginess, that acid. Now we can add more lime.
We can add more.
Oh, you can add more lime. If we feel like it wasn't spicy enough, we can then add more peppers. If it's too spicy, it's kind of hard to take away ingredients, but in this instance, maybe you can chop up more of the watermelon to add in, and it should help dilute it a bit more. It should make it less spicy, more sweet. So taste testing is really important because you want to make sure that what you're making is something that you want to eat, that you think other people would enjoy as well. So just keep that in mind.
All right, so now we're gonna keep this. Yes, Casey, sorry. What were you saying?
I'm so sorry. I was just going to mention, as I was trying, I realized mine had a lot of lime juice to it. So as you guys were talking, I had chopped up more watermelon and put it in. And now I think it's perfect. And like Matthew had said, that same mixing spoon that I'm using, obviously I was tasting it because this salsa is going to be mine. And I'm not sharing it with anybody. Go ahead, Carmen.
Yeah, so we're done with the watermelon salsa. We're going to put it in the fridge. I think after you make it, store it in the fridge for a little while before consuming it. I think the flavors would even help it like set better and it taste better.
So same with a lot of soups or chilies or other foods you might be eating that you made fresh. If you wait overnight or just a couple hours, the flavors will sort of marry one another and become more pronounced and mix well together. And even though it might taste like good now, it might taste even better later. So just keep that in mind as well.
Okay. So I'm gonna store this in the fridge, and we're gonna use a new cutting board. Let me get you
We do call this a salsa, and typically when we think of salsa, we think of tortilla chips and dipping it in. You can really use this salsa for anything. You can add it to tacos, you can add it to fish or chicken. Really experiment and see what other dishes, what other foods can be really enhanced by this watermelon salsa, which is a great combination of sour, sweet, spicy in our case.
Okay. All right, so now we're gonna move on to our second recipe. We have a blender, so we're gonna use that. So second recipe is a watermelon slush. So it's pretty much a drink. It's like a slushy drink. We have a blender. This recipe originally comes from the, I believe, National 4-H Cookbook. And I thought, oh, perfect. Since we're doing watermelon, let's use that recipe. The recipe calls for a blender, and we have one. Casey doesn't have a blender, so we're kind of going to show you two ways. One way making with a blender, and one way without, which is what Casey is going to do. So let's start, I guess, with the blender version. So we are using a completely new set of cutting board, a knife. The watermelon is the half of what we already cut earlier, because I think one small watermelon is actually a pretty good size. It gives us quite a bit. So Matthew's gonna start chopping up the watermelon. We just want to get it into cubes, chunks, and he'll chop it, put it in the blender, and we also got strawberries, which we are going to add to it as well. Now what we got were frozen strawberries, so we are going to just put it in with the watermelon and blend it together. Casey bought fresh strawberries, so what he's going to do is he's actually going to slice up the strawberries. Again, make sure if you buy it fresh that Casey wash it ahead of time before you actually start prepping it.
And just a quick note.
I'm gonna.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm gonna go along at the same time as you guys are chopping up on your end, and I'm just gonna put my ingredients in a bowl because I don't have a blender. Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. So as Carmen said, we're using a completely new set. The reason is because that knife over there and that cutting board has been in contact with different things that may not go well with the slushy. We just cut up jalapeno, onion, parsley / cilantro. And the only thing that's really similar between these two recipes is the watermelon. So while cilantro, while hot peppers might be great in a salsa, it may not be the best thing in a nice, cool fruit drink. So that's why we're using a brand new set. And you'll notice that this watermelon, it's the same one that we used for the first recipe, but it was the first thing we cut. So it hasn't come into contact with a knife that cut up cilantro beforehand. So that's why you're only gonna get the flavor of watermelon in this, which is why we cut the watermelon first. All right, and especially for this recipe, we were very, very precise with the slicing. We wanted to make sure we got small little pieces because it is a salsa that's gonna go on top of different dishes, chips or fish. In this case, because on our side, we're gonna blend it, you don't need to be as precise. It just needs to be small enough pieces that'll fit inside this blender jar and not get caught at the top or not get thoroughly blended up. So you can be a little more chunky with these slices here.
So we would want to have about a cup to 2 cups of watermelon, depending. Again, you can adjust accordingly. If you want more watermelon, you can add more. And also, we will have the recipe posted with the video as well. So you will get the measurements there.
So we're adding our watermelon first. All right. And that looks pretty good. I'm gonna save this other half. I'm probably gonna just eat it on my own because I love watermelon. Next, we're gonna add some lime juice, or lemon juice, I'm sorry. And how much lemon juice are we adding?
About a 1/4 cup.
1/4 cup, okay. And as we've been saying this whole time, a little bit less. And as we've been saying this whole time, these recipes, they are written on paper and there are, certain amounts like a cup or 1 cup or 1/4 cup. Experiment. This is all about finding a recipe that suits your taste. So if you like it to be more sour, add more lemon juice. If you want it to be more sweet, maybe you want to add more of the fruit, the watermelon, the strawberries. So while there are specific amounts that are recommended, you can really make it your own in this case.
I'm going to add on to that because I don't have lemon. I'm going to use my lime that I used from the last recipe, and I also really like lime.
And what's next?
The strawberries.
Strawberries. So as Carmen said, we're using frozen strawberries, and I like to use frozen strawberries because then you don't really need to use ice to get that nice slushy texture. But if you're using fresh strawberries like Casey is, she's going to show you what he's going to do on his end. And I'm actually really curious because he doesn't have a blender, so I want to see how innovative he is in making a slushy by hand. That'll be fascinating. That'll be awesome.
Sometimes we don't have blenders. As always, when you get strawberries, I've already rinsed mine. And for the sake of time, I've already chopped a couple of them, but I'm going to show and demonstrate same idea about like how to cut a strawberry. Same thing, paws, not claws. Go ahead and cut the crown, the top part where the green is, to the side. At that point, you'll have the strawberry on a nice, like kind of a flat surface, just like Matthew has been demonstrating this whole video about making sure nothing moves as you chop it. And I'm just going to go ahead and chop into thin slices.
All right, so while Casey's chopping, we have the option now to add some sweetener. That might be honey in this case, or just sugar, or if you have something called simple syrup. The reason we're not going to add it first right now is because we are adding fruit to this, the strawberry, the watermelon, which already have natural sugar in them. So they're naturally sweet. So we may not need to add extra sweetener. And in fact, if we don't have to add it, that's even better. Well, we'll be reducing the amount of sugar that we're taking in. So think of it like when you go to a coffee shop or a restaurant and you order a milkshake, you can't really control how sweet it is. But here we can control how much sugar we're adding to it. And you know, if you don't like too many sweet drinks, this might be perfect for you. You can add more lemon juice instead. All right, so we're gonna now blend it, and it's gonna be quite loud, I apologize. With any of these blends though, you're gonna notice that we put the watermelon in first because it has more water. If we put the strawberries in first, it may not blend as well. And actually, we might find a situation here where it's not gonna blend as evenly. In situations like this, you can add more liquid. That might just be a cup of water, or it might even be a cup of watermelon juice or strawberry juice, but you might need that liquid to help this thing get going. All right. And I've had a lot of issues with this blender, so we're gonna see if I can do it right. Ah, there we go. So, it's gonna be loud, I apologize.
As Matthew's showing the demonstration on the blender, I've added all my ingredients into a bowl, and I have a wooden spoon, and I'm just going to smash it all down and kind of make it into a slush.
Sorry about that. So Casey, how are you doing it right now? You're smashing it by hand?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So as you were doing the blender, I threw all of my ingredients, the watermelon, the strawberry, and the lime juice into a bowl. And I have a wooden spoon since I don't have the blender. And I'm just going to go ahead and smash it down. And because it's all kind of soft, it's all kind of like mixing together pretty nicely right now.
Is it working? So if you don't have a blender and you still want to make this, definitely try it out. Try, you know, just using a spoon and mashing the watermelon. Watermelon is relatively soft and easy to kind of just smash and crush. That's what Casey is doing right now. You just kind of have to get creative sometimes when you don't necessarily have the tools to do certain things or make certain recipes. So just get creative. One thing that would be really awesome, it's not an original recipe, but it would be really good to add to is mint or basil. Basil is actually currently, I believe, also in season. I think it's a summer season herb. So try it. I think it would taste delicious with either one of those.
Would you like to try some?
Yeah, so we're gonna do a quick taste test with new clean spoons. and see if we need to add anything else.
We're gonna see if it's sweet enough, if we added enough acid. Oh, yeah, I like that.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's
definitely sweet enough.
It's the watermelon itself is sweet, so that's good. And then with the addition of the lemon juice, it has kind of like a tartness to it, which is it's nice. It's super refreshing. Definitely a great summer drink.
Yeah, and we definitely don't need to add any more sugar or honey, which is great. And once again, just like the salsa, this is not going to keep that long. It's made of fresh ingredients. And so I would say maybe try to drink it within a couple days, at most 3 days. And the thing about this is that since we use frozen strawberries, it may not be as slushy of a texture the next day. So it might be a drink that you want to drink the same day after you make it. All right, so Casey, how did yours turn out?
So mine's a lot chunkier for sure than a blender would have, but it's actually really good. The acid from the lime juice that I used, the strawberries and the watermelon, because I crushed it all up before I added the ice, it like really mixed well. And then just breaking down the ice has made it really cold and refreshing. I actually think it's like a thicker slushy almost in a way. I actually really like it. I'm not gonna add any other sugar to it.
So what did you do with the strawberries?
What did I do with the strawberries?
Yeah. So did you just?
So I had chopped. Oh yeah. So as I was showing before, I had sliced the strawberries into thin pieces, and then I kind of kept cutting them or dicing them into smaller pieces, as small as I could manage. Add that to the watermelon with the lime juice. And then because the strawberries are in small pieces, the watermelon's pretty soft, and then the lime juice is the liquid, it all really mixed into like I don't know how to say it, like a mush really well. And then with the ice, it's just made it a lot colder.
Yeah, that's great. So Casey's doing it in a bowl. He's mixing it in a bowl. But if you want to, you can also put it in a bottle or like a mason jar, and then cap it and just like shake it.
I would definitely eat mine with a spoon though.
Oh, eat it with spoon. That works too. Awesome. Yay.
Oh, I'll do this later. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, Casey, with your bowl spoon.
It's still really good.
It's good.
And this is an example of a mason jar. You can get these from any store. It has a removable ring lid as well as the actual top. And this is what Carmen was speaking of when she said you can put these smoothies inside of here, shake it up if you don't have a blender. And
they're good for storing too. So you can put it in there, store in the fridge for a little bit. It's not gonna keep, but if you can't drink it like right now, that is one way that you can store it. Put it in the jar and put it in the fridge. So that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you very much for joining us and tuning in and watching with us. This is by no means a professional video at all. We're just trying to produce something fun that you can do in our homes, in our kitchens. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. We look forward to actually seeing you guys try these recipes and take pictures and post it so that we can see how your watermelon salsa and watermelon slush turns out. So thank you so much to Casey and Matthew for being here, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.